Karoline Leavitt, a rising conservative star, found herself at the center of a heated media storm when a liberal TV host attempted to mock her during a high-profile interview. Underestimating her ability to deliver a sharp and confident rebuttal that left viewers stunned and critics scrambling for explanations, as the conversation began with the host attempting to belittle her policy positions, dismissing her views as extreme, while employing the typical mainstream media tactics of condescension and loaded questioning. Yet Leavitt remained composed, refusing to take the bait, countering every smear with articulate responses that not only dismantled the host's argument, but exposed the glaring bias in the way conservative voices are treated in the media, making it clear that she was more than capable of handling the pressure, as she pointed out the hypocrisy of the media's approach, referencing instances where liberal politicians were given soft interviews despite having radical stances. A moment that clearly made the host uncomfortable, causing a visible shift in demeanor as they attempted to regain control of the conversation. But Leavitt was relentless, doubling down with facts, figures, and undeniable examples of media double standards, calling out the networks for their selective outrage, exposing how conservative women are often treated differently than their liberal counterparts, not as empowered individuals, but as threats to the establishment, a narrative that mainstream media refuses to acknowledge. And yet, despite the host's repeated attempts to derail her, Leavitt refused to back down. Even when faced with interruptions and dismissive chuckles, she maintained her unwavering confidence, turning the tables by questioning the host on their own network's inconsistencies, bringing up past interviews where liberal politicians were allowed to spread misinformation unchecked, forcing the host into an awkward position where they had no choice but to either defend their network's hypocrisy or pivot away from the conversation, which they attempted to do. But Leavitt was prepared, pressing forward with a fiery determination that quickly turned the interview in her favor, leaving the host visibly rattled as the audience watching in real time recognized the one-sided nature of the exchange. As clips of the interview quickly went viral, conservatives hailed Leavitt's performance as a masterclass in media takedown, praising her ability to expose the blatant bias that so often plagues political discourse. And even some independent viewers who typically lean liberal admitted that she handled herself exceptionally well, proving that conservative voices, especially young, articulate women like Leavitt, are not to be underestimated, with social media erupting in discussions about how she managed to completely flip the script, turning what was meant to be an embarrassing moment for her into a major win, as conservative commentators highlighted the importance of standing firm against media attacks, using her response as an example of why it's crucial to push back against dishonest narratives, while mainstream outlets scrambled to control the damage, selectively editing clips of the interview in an attempt to soften the impact. But the full, uncut version spread like wildfire across alternative media platforms, with millions of views pouring in as people witnessed firsthand how the media's attempt to discredit her had backfired spectacularly. And in the days that followed, Leavitt capitalized on the moment, using the attention to further spread her message, making media appearances where she doubled down on the points she made in the interview, emphasizing the need for conservatives to stand their ground, proving that the era of allowing the media to dictate narratives unchallenged was coming to an end, all while the liberal host, clearly embarrassed by the outcome, tried to downplay the incident. But the damage was already done, as Leavitt had solidified her reputation as a formidable force in conservative politics, someone who could not only hold her own against media bias, but completely turn the tables, sending a clear message to anyone who thought they could silence or intimidate her, as conservatives rallied behind her, celebrating the moment as a defining example of why the establishment fears strong conservative voices, recognizing that the more they try to suppress them, the louder they become, making it undeniable that Karoline Leavitt's savage response had not only shocked her critics, but it also ignited a new wave of confidence among conservatives willing to challenge the status quo, proving once again that when faced with adversity, standing firm in one's beliefs is the ultimate way to win the battle of ideas. In a political media landscape increasingly defined by bias, selective outrage, and ideological battles, one moment stood out as a defining clash between the establishment media and the new generation of conservative leaders. When a prominent liberal TV host, known for pushing progressive narratives and dismissing conservative viewpoints as outdated or extreme, attempted to mock Karoline Leavitt, the young and fearless conservative spokesperson who had been making waves in political circles, setting the stage for what would become one of the most talked-about exchanges in recent political discourse. As the segment began with the host adopting the usual patronizing tone, framing the discussion in a way that subtly undermined Leavitt's credibility before she even had a chance to speak, crafting questions that were less about obtaining real answers and more about signaling to their audience that Leavitt's views were not to be taken seriously. But what the host didn't anticipate was that Leavitt had come prepared, not just with facts and policy knowledge, but with the poise, confidence, and sharp rhetorical skills needed to turn the conversation into a complete reversal of expectations, as the host began by rolling their eyes at Leavitt's views on media bias, attempting to paint her concerns as conspiracy theories or mere grievances of the right-wing echo chamber. Yet instead of taking the bait and responding emotionally, Leavitt remained calm, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back, as she allowed the host to speak, to dig deeper into their own dismissive rhetoric, before finally cutting through the noise with a response that was as devastating as it was precise, calling out the hypocrisy of a media ecosystem that claims to champion diversity of thought, yet actively works to silence conservative voices, pointing out that she, as a young woman in politics, should theoretically be celebrated under the left's supposed commitment to female empowerment. Yet because her views do not align with progressive orthodoxy, she is treated not as an independent thinker, but as a threat, a comment that seemed to catch the host off guard, leading to an awkward pause before they quickly attempted to regain control of the narrative, pivoting to the standard accusations of misinformation. But Leavitt was relentless, flipping the script by challenging the host to name a single instance where a liberal politician was subjected to the same level of scrutiny, interruption, and hostility as conservative figures routinely endure, pressing the issue further by referencing past interviews conducted by the same network, where left-wing guests were given softball questions, uninterrupted time to speak, and sympathetic nods despite their own history of controversial statements, as the host, clearly rattled, tried to dismiss the argument by claiming that the media simply holds conservatives accountable for their words. Leavitt countered with a cutting remark, questioning why that same accountability never seemed to apply when progressive politicians made blatantly false claims, citing specific instances where liberal figures spread misinformation with zero pushback, highlighting how selective outrage has become a weapon, not a principle. At this point, the interview had shifted dramatically, with the host now visibly uncomfortable, their usual smug demeanor replaced with frustration as they struggled to regain the upper hand. But Leavitt refused to yield, her voice unwavering, her arguments razor-sharp, continuing to expose the double standards, the coordinated media attacks, the way conservatives, especially conservative women, are treated with a level of disdain that their liberal counterparts never experience, bringing up examples that left the host scrambling for a coherent response, as the audience watching in real time recognized that this was not the takedown the network had hoped for, but rather a showcase of just how intellectually dishonest mainstream media had become, with Leavitt making it abundantly clear that she was not there to be bullied, mocked, or condescended to, but to fight back, her words cutting through the host's attempts to reframe the discussion, her ability to stay composed in the face of blatant disrespect, making her performance all the more powerful. And as the conversation continued, she made sure to hammer home the point that the American people were waking up to these tactics, that the media's monopoly on controlling narratives was slipping, that independent voices were rising, and that no matter how hard they tried to silence or ridicule conservatives, they would not succeed, because the truth was too powerful to suppress. A statement that resonated deeply, as clips of the interview quickly began circulating online, spreading like wildfire across social media, with conservatives rallying behind Leavitt, celebrating her ability to dismantle the host's talking points with surgical precision, while even some moderate and independent viewers acknowledged that she had been treated unfairly and had handled herself with remarkable composure, proving that the establishment media's grip on the narrative was weakening, as alternative media outlets picked up the story, further amplifying the moment, analyzing the exchange, breaking down every detail of how Leavitt had managed to turn what was meant to be an ambush into a defining victory, with commentators praising her ability to expose the inherent bias of the legacy media, some even calling it one of the most significant pushbacks against mainstream media narratives in recent memory, as Leavitt herself capitalized on the moment, making additional media appearances where she doubled down on her argument, refusing to let the host's tactics go unchallenged, emphasizing the need for conservatives to stand firm, to never allow themselves to be silenced, and to continue calling out hypocrisy wherever it appears, while on the other side, the liberal host and their network attempted to control the damage, selectively editing clips of the interview in an effort to portray Leavitt as angry or defensive. Yet the full, uncut version had already gained too much traction, with millions of views and a growing consensus that the media's attempt to discredit her had failed spectacularly, leading to heated debates online, with left-wing commentators trying to downplay the exchange, while conservative figures celebrated it as a defining moment in the ongoing battle against media manipulation, a moment that proved that when armed with the truth, conservatives could not only hold their own in hostile territory, but they could also dominate, leaving their opponents floundering, as Leavitt's name trended on social media. Her following skyrocketed, her influence expanded, and she became a symbol of the new conservative movement, a movement that refuses to be bullied, that refuses to allow media elites to dictate what can and cannot be said, and that recognizes the importance of fighting back with intelligence, confidence, and fearlessness, proving that no matter how much the media tries to stack the deck against them, moments like this will continue to happen, because the truth, when spoken boldly, is impossible to ignore. And as Leavitt's response continued to reverberate across the political sphere, it sent a clear message not just to the media, but to every conservative watching. The days of allowing themselves to be silenced were over, and a new era of unapologetic, fearless conservative voices had begun, ensuring that no amount of mockery, bias, or selective outrage would ever be enough to stop them from speaking the truth. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories.